This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, getting right to it, huh? I was going to ask Tammy how her trip was, but now it's going to be recorded. So.
I'll talk to you about it later. How's that? Matt, do you see you have a raised hand function?
I have a raised hand function now.
Do you see it at the top of the page up here where my pointer is? Wait, you see my screen? Do you guys have the same thing?
I do not.
I don't
Okay.
see a hand thing, but I'm going to click on more options. Yeah, I don't see it.
Okay, so I'm going to send you guys the link after this meeting then to show you that they've enhanced their GoToMeeting experience. You just have to use the app.
I'm
So
using the app.
So it's right at, well, my bar, I moved my bar to the top, but it's going to be, you'll see it's like a little hand. It's gray shaded right now. It's next to your camera, your microphone and your camera. It could be down at the bottom for your screen where you see your microphone, camera. There's a little hand feature. React.
I don't have a hand feature.
Me neither.
Me either.
Maybe we have to like download the latest version.
I'll send that. Yeah, so that's what I'll do. I'll send that after this. I'll send it tomorrow. Okay, so everybody can have it. But they updated it with this, and then this month they sent this link like how you can have your background. I mean, just doing all kinds of updates to it. But this hand feature is real easy to use. I'll send the link out tomorrow after the meeting. Hi, Brian.
Hello. Hey, everyone.
Hello.
I better text. I know Lewis transferred it. I saw it, but I better text them just to make sure they know it's 6 o'clock.
He did email me and tell me he would be attending, so.
He's waiting to be let in. Lewis. Okay. Let's make sure he has the.
Yeah, mine did that earlier today.
We're on.
And then I got a little blurb that said, I'm ready. And so I clicked on that and then it bypassed it.
Yeah, I don't put in all those passwords and all that because I don't want to forget to let somebody in. And they go, Tammy, do you have something against me? She didn't let me in the meeting? Let me send Lewis the link real quick.
So can you hear me? I was getting a voice problem, an audio problem.
I can hear you, Kirk.
Okay, good.
Let me send Lewis the text. He says he's getting a waiting link. I don't know why, because I don't put in all that stuff.
Yeah. Tell him to look for the link that says, I'm ready. There should be like a little box. That's what I got earlier today.
He's trying, Kirk. I just texted him again the link just in case he has to get out and get back in. Rena had to do that as well. Boy, everyone's quiet.
Well, if we get too busy before the meeting, then everything will go wrong and we won't be able to get started. Right. Murphy's Law of video.
All right. Agreed. Hi, Jeevan.
This is also, I think I'm going on my I had 11 hours of meetings yesterday
Yeah.
between a commission meeting and an evening meeting. And then I'm going to be going on probably another 10 hours of online meetings today. That's just too much time staring at a
It,
computer.
it really is. Ren and I, same day today. Well, I think he had more meetings than me. He had 2 more than me. I think I had 4. This is my 5th. And I think he had like 6 or 7 meetings today.
Yeah.
All virtual, back to back. Okay, Lewis doesn't usually have problems. He hasn't texted me back, so. Do you want to wait a couple more minutes, Kirk? At 6:03. You want to wait for a couple more minutes for him?
Yeah, a couple minutes is fine.
Okay.
I'm not sure that we're going to do that much important in the first few minutes if he's a
Great.
little bit late, but
Yeah.
let's give him the benefit of the doubt for now.
With this silence, Tammy, must be driving you crazy for your speaking style, right?
There's Lewis. So can you hear us, Lewis?
Yes.
Good. Then I guess we can get started, Tammy.
Is that me?
Yeah, go ahead, Monique. Mhm.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Mid-Peninsula Water District Special Board Meeting. Tonight is July. Today is January 13th, 2022. So with that, I will call the roll. President Wheeler,
Present?
Vice President Vella,
Here.
Director Zuka,
Here.
Director Schmidt,
Here.
and Director Mostasisa.
Here.
Sorry, I hope I said that right.
Perfect.
I've been looking at your names all day. Okay, so we have a quorum. Sorry.
Thank you, Monique. We
So,
did not
item
receive any
2.
public comment, just so you know. I should have probably stated that, but no public comment has been received before the meeting. And I don't see anybody
Okay.
on here.
Item 3, agenda review. Anyone have any additions or deletions from the agenda items as presented? I'll take that as a no. Okay.
No.
And we can go on to the regular business items. First, 4A is progress report.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to read the report, but I was going to touch on some of the highlights. I tried to make it not as confusing by addressing it by the A priorities versus the B priorities, and then just making sure, making sure that I touched on everyone just so someone didn't think that a project got left out. But in this report, I summarized that all of the strategic plan A priorities were addressed. I attached the summary from the Urban Water Management Plan with regard to the Urban Water Conservation Policy, the California Way of Life, just to make sure that it stays out in front of us. I discussed this with staff today as well, just because the state is moving through these regulations and they're going to be adopted and things are going to be changing and regulations are going to be in place. And I just want to make sure that we all stay on top of that with regard to that program particularly. I wanted to make sure with regard to that too, that, you hear from Rena every month and we continue to report to DWR. We never stopped reporting and it still tracks it. It's interesting to the 2013 consumption, but we're doing it both ways where we still do what we report to the state in compliance with their regulations. And then we also compare to the 2020 period between the 2 years in order to measure our consumption trends regarding the governor's voluntary call for 15% reduction. And then we stay pretty active at the Bosca level. Jeanette is definitely one that participates in each and every meeting, the Water Resources Committee meetings. The district is pretty much engaged in almost every program that Bosca supports. And then, we usually are engaged a little bit higher participation level than a lot of the agencies. But right now, what we're looking at, and I think Jeanette reported it out today at our staff meeting, that the outdoor requirements for commercial, industrial, and institutional, I think they came out today. So we're going to see what the state's going to have with regard to that group of customers. They've already come out with the residential customers and the gallons per capita per day, which the targets are going to be 55 GPCD by 2023. It's going to be 47 gallons per capita per day by 2025. And then it's going to be 42 GPCD by 2030 and beyond. And so staff was kind of taken aback a little bit with that today, because of course they're measuring it and saying, now what's going to happen when we are not receiving all those revenues, and are we going to be fined? Are we going to be triggered? So all of that is to come. And I recall that when the regulations were first talked about, that initially there's not going to be, every agency or water supplier is going to get a water budget, and all of these types of parameters are ways that we're going to try to stay within that water budget for our agency. So I just wanted to highlight that one, because it's going to be one that's going to have to be out in the forefront, particularly given that we're looking at, the retirement, Jeanette's retirement in 2023, my retirement in 2023, and we seem to be pretty engaged. Renna is now pretty engaged in the water resources as well. So her replacing her position and probably really having a longer stretch of some overlap with that is going to be important, to bring somebody on board that either has knowledge about the California Conservation Way of Life, or that we can get them trained up, because there's going to be just far more requirements for us as an agency regarding that program. So I wanted to just highlight that one right at the beginning, and just see if there's any questions about the California Conservation Way of Life, just because it's pretty important.
Since it's open for questions, does anybody have any comments?
Kirk, I have a quick comment.
Sure.
Tammy, if memory serves me right, we adopted the 10% way before the state even dreamt of doing something in anticipation of a drought year, which was very, very smart, in the beginning of 2021, because we did have a drought year. But then when the state came with the 15, we ended up with a 12% reduction. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so you're right. The board had asked us, are we going to get out ahead with messaging early? And every one of us knows that if we were to ask today for them customers to start saving 20% tomorrow, it would take 90 days for it to start impacting and change the behavior changes, showing up in the consumption trends. So it was wise. We actually took a little bit of a criticism. I've told you that before, with the Bosca community. They were like, why are you guys asking for 10%? And I'm thinking, because it's voluntary. I know it's winter, but who cares? We don't know that there's going to be rain. It doesn't hurt to get out ahead of it. And now I'm really thankful that we did that, because the customers have responded, and very well so. So right now, Rena, the latest is a cumulative 9.8, 9.5.
Cumulative, well, for December, it was 9.7%, and cumulative, I think it was I'm going to say between 7.5% and 10%, but I think it's close to 7.5% for all of 2021.
Okay, since the beginning of the fiscal year. So we're doing pretty good, Louis. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, but we're asking for 15, correct?
We're okay. So that's a good point. I just explained that to a staff member today too. So here's the communication issue, and I brought this up at Bosca. So we've been asking for 10. San Francisco PUC has asked for voluntary 10, beginning January 1st.
Correct.
The state is asking for 15.
15. Correct.
Hold on. Tier 2 for the Mid-Peninsula Water District, which is now in place, is 13% because it's based on a model. Now, as the general manager, the first thing I did is throw my hands in the air at the last BOSCA meeting and go, how do I message that? How do we message that, right? So we decided internally to just stay with the voluntary 15% call from the governor so that we stay safe. I don't want to mix the message up with customers
Correct.
unless you all
I
see
agree with that.
otherwise.
No. Yeah.
And just stay with the governor's call because that's what they're going to see, on the social media, on the newspapers, television, 15%. So we're sticking with the voluntary 15. Same point. That's why I didn't ask to move from tier level 1 out of our water shortage contingency plan because everything is still voluntary. And level 1, it used to be called stage 1, is 0 to 10%,
Mhm.
and the next one is 11 to 15%. I just stayed, and I just don't see a need to move where others were moving their levels and making them mandatory, and I just don't see the need. Our customers are responding. We're not at 15% yet, but we have been. Some of the months we were higher than 15%. So right now, I just think we're in a good position. And overall, we're fitting within the wholesale customer boundaries. Rena, help me out. They're around 10% for the wholesale customer base, as I recall from the last
Yeah,
BOSCA meeting.
it's close to 10%. Yeah. Hmm.
So we're doing pretty good as an agency, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree that if you throw in numbers that are different than what everybody is hearing on the media and especially on the the news channels, the 2, the 4, the 7, and the 5 channels, because that's what everybody hears. We cannot beat those people as far as outreach. But so I have no problem with staying with the 15, knowing that we probably will not get 15, but we're asking for that. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any
And
other questions?
Oh.
No? I had one, not exactly a question, but more of a concern after having been to the Aqua Conference and listening to them at the time, which had to do with our new conservation goal is going to be set not just based on the per capita values, but based on this GIS-based number of how much irrigated land we have within the district and what type of land it is and what the irrigation component should be. So all of the outdoor use is going to get a budget number as well as the per capita indoor use, separate from commercial industrial, but all of the residential units are going to be. And so I'm concerned going forward what that number is going to start to look like. And I hope at some point in the future, we can talk about what that number looks like in Belmont and what sort of land use numbers they're coming up with. Is it going to make it worse or better for us than what 2013 or 2020 was?
It's a valid comment. And so the way that I understand it is with those indoor standards with GPCD, that's how the state came up with the target. That's part 1. Part 2 is what they apparently approved today or yesterday, which is the outdoor use, the CII component and the outdoor use. And that's going to be part 2. And then they're building a model that they're going to take our customer base because they now have flown over. They got all our parcels for the outdoor. They know how many customers we have because we report that every month. And they're going to come up with a water budget that encompasses all of that based on those regulations. And that's the number they're going to send us. So right now on a year, okay, so our contract with the SFPUC, the water supply agreement, is 3.8 million MGDs, okay? Million gallons per day. We use about 264 to 265 annually. So the budget is going to come in somewhere lower than that 265, obviously. And because of the tier 2 with SFPUC, that number is going to be a lot lower. So then they're just going to say at a state level, here's your water budget, Mid-Penn Water District, figure it out. Figure out how, just make sure that you stay within this budget on an annual basis. So, and then for the first few years, there will be no fines or no, penalties, but they'll eventually come out with those. So it'll be interesting, Kirk. And yes, we will absolutely be bringing that because it's going to be probably the next road show after the board fully considers all of that information that we're going to need to get out there with the community and the community groups and the customers.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to scroll through my report. Someone stop me if they want me to hit an item, in this, the number 1 strategic plan element for external relationships and customer service. I just talked about the billing account arrearages being hovering around this $34,000 amount because that's what we applied for from the state. I think, as I recall, it's about a February or March turnaround period where we're going to hear whether, what amount we're going to get back. But they did receive our application in a timely fashion. And apparently, the way I understand it is we will more than likely get that full amount back. And those customers will get their full balances paid. So that report from Misty a couple of months ago, that was the balance that we submitted, and those customers will end up getting their accounts paid in full based on that plan and that program and the parameters for it. You've heard from our website consultants, so I won't go into that detail. The coordination with the city of Belmont continues. In fact, today was our first quarterly meeting for 2022. Rena was very prepared, and what I always like to do sitting in those meetings is listen to everything that we rattle off with regard to projects and coordination, and then it comes their turn and there's 3 or 4 projects, but today they actually had more, and their biggest concern right now is development. They said there is so much development going on, and they are so concerned about water supply. I said, as you rightfully should be, because we will be looking at all of that based on these new regulations, and at what point, after the board discussions, will there maybe not be enough of a water supply at some point in the future for development. So they're continuing. They said today, as I recall, they're going to hire 2 or 3 more people to do plan check reviews, and that it's just booming in Belmont. So
Tammy, who was the meeting with today?
this is with the Public Works team. So this is Peter Brown as the leader, and the 2 operations folks that he has that coordinate with Brent and Michael and our field staff. And then Rena, Brent, Michael, and myself. Jubin was unavailable today to attend, but he's typically there as well. And sometimes they bring in their engineer. Her name's Bojana.
Do you still have meetings with Afshin as well?
Afshin and I planned, or when we met last, talked about meeting again in March. So I'll be coordinating that meeting again with him. We're going to do that every 3 or 4 months.
Okay, thank you.
And they asked that today too. So because of all their housing requirements, housing plan requirements, they're just wanting to make sure that Afshin and I are still on the same level of making sure that we're having the communications at our level. So I made that commitment that I would get that meeting set up with Afshin for early March.
Before you move on this topic, I just, for the benefit of the board and as a stake in the sand, if you will, the San Mateo is going through its general plan update, and given RENA numbers and its housing needs, is projecting basically in excess of ABAG 2040, a population effectively the size of Belmont, bigger than what Cal Water has in their recently adopted urban water management plan. So whether or not the housing comes, whether or not the people come, I have no idea. But just taking RENA numbers, land use, all that kind of stuff, literally the major discrepancy right now is we somehow have to find enough water to support a city the size of Belmont, to support the housing needs that are coming through that the state is mandating on top of everything else that's happening. So I do think that that's going to be a bigger issue and a big issue as GPCD goes down. There's only so much we can do. We got to surprise. You can only take GPC so low in order to fund and provide water for more houses. And so yeah, that's going to be again, it's all pie in the sky projections, but if it becomes real, they're big numbers.
Yes, and we actually agreed that we would do more meetings because of their arena numbers that they're publishing. They're in the process, and we're going to stay on top of it because of all the requirements that they have as a city. So, yeah, moving forward, this is, it's going to be interesting to see at the state legislature how they're going to these competitive project processes, if you will, with the housing demands and assessments and needs and water and sewer infrastructure supply and development. So because the city mentioned their issues with sewer development. So yes, it's something that we're staying on top of, and we just have to continue to coordinate. So thank you, Matt, for bringing that up because that was Peter's concern as well as we went through today. Besides all the other projects, so we're working on Harbor with the district engineering team, and apparently the city wants to lay a sewer out there. So Rena and Peter are going to be in contact, and we may be just designing that and shelving it to wait for their sewer project in the next couple of years, depending on what their time frame is. All of that's going to be coordinated, but they've got a sewer line they got to lay down Harbor, the same from ECR down to Karen Road, but they have to annex that property. They're actually accelerating the annexation process within their general plan, and they're going to take over that unincorporated area. So that was news to me today. I don't know if any of you have heard that. We may be just finishing the design on Harbor and picking another project while we wait for them, because that's a major undertaking on Harbor Boulevard. But he said too, the development that they're getting in on Harbor is just shocking. So Harbor is going to probably have a new look here in the next 5 to 10 years. Okay, so moving on, the strategic element for the implementation of the zone-based elections, the board's going to see that this month. First public hearing, second public hearing next month, and then in March you will be approving the maps for the November 2022 election. And the consultant is ready with the maps that they presented to you in draft format a couple of months ago, and we're ready to go for that. And that will be achieved. In resource management, which is the second strategic element of our strategic plan, the urban water management plan and the water shortage contingency plan, as you well know, was the #1 priority, and those have been completed and submitted. And then we already talked about the 10% water campaign that we started in January 2021. Thanks, Lewis, for bringing that up. And we continue to coordinate, and actually we just got some outreach this week with the SFPUC because we offered up the back of our building because it's on 101. And so they're coordinating with Jeanette. They may be hanging some banners out there and doing some communication because, we're all in this together, and we can help out by having some of their information on the back of our building as well. You've seen some of our banners flying too in the city. Everything has to be coordinated with the city. We got to pay $375 or $350 every time one of those banners flies. And we don't get to pick which location, but they try to swap us back and forth there on Ralston. But we continue to coordinate those as well and make sure that the message continues to stay out in front of the customers.
But we're all in this together, and they charge us that $300, right?
The city, that's the city with the fee. Yeah.
But
yeah,
but
no.
we're all in this together. So I'm assuming
Yeah.
the city
Well,
should be in it.
it's funny because it's an application fee, and I'm always like, can't we just, apply and there's an NC, no charge, right? I'll actually talk to Afshin about that.
There you go.
Okay, so our groundwater supply options were presented to the board, and we actually submitted a coordinated grant application. As you know, we reported out with the city of East Palo Alto, Brisbane, and North Coast County Water District and Parisma Hills Water District. We called it the Peninsula Groundwater Supply Grant App. And I did get news from DWR last week that they said we met all of the program requirements, that project, and that included all 5. And so we're just waiting now to see when we hear about the funding. So we understand that's good news when we get that kind of communication from DWR. We have not heard back on our Cove and Tank project. So as soon as I know that, I'll make sure that I share that information too with the board. We've talked about water conservation. I want to just kind of highlight this G at the bottom of the page about all the presentations we've made, because Lewis was reporting to me he attended the HIA meeting, so there's one to add on January 6th. I put it in here. And that apparently went well too, even though it was a smaller group of people. I think they said there was about a dozen people there. Everybody has really received these presentations well. So kudos to Rena because he keeps updating them on a month-to-month basis to keep the information fresh and out there. Our next meeting, for your information, as a group is January 25th, which is Tuesday night. Let me confirm the time really quick. It is for the first time we're going to be presenting before the San Carlos Economic Development Advisory Commission. So this is at 4 o'clock. It's a virtual meeting, and as soon as I get the link, I will forward it to the board if you're interested in attending. And we will be presenting the drought presentation. They've asked us before and they canceled because their meeting, they had something else come up, but they asked us again because they do attend the HIA meetings too. So that's the next time we'll be making the drought presentation. And we've talked about conservation. So moving on to the strategic element number 3, infrastructure management and operations, just all the CIP projects, which I think staff does a pretty good job reporting those out every month. I just shared the ones and what phase we're in. We're about to begin to complete the transmission water main assessment. They're coming back the first week of February. And then you hear from District Council and Rena every month on those items. The emergency operations plan that was required under the EPA American Water Infrastructure Act was submitted on time. The staff made a presentation before I left on vacation, and they did a really good job. It was done internally. I wish that it could completely be shared publicly, but there's some information in there that, you know, with regard to protected facets of our infrastructure and some of the things that we're doing, we haven't. So if any of you are interested in it, you can certainly ask, and Ren and I can present sections of it. They did a really good job, though. It was a huge undertaking again, and I think you would be very impressed compared to what some of you remember hearing from that consultant, Tetra Tech. Okay, so Rena, if you have anything else you want to add, I just really thought staff did a really good job on this, and it's a work in progress.
Yeah, we didn't reinvent the wheel. You know, after we started working on this, you know, we found that actually the state had created a template for emergency response plans for water agencies to use, and basically we could go in there and say, yes, this applies to us because it was both set up for water distribution and water treatment. So we took the sections or the components that were related to water distribution agencies and applied them to us. And so it did make it a lot easier. It's much more thorough than what the board heard from Tetra Tech, and it tied well with also the document that we prepared prior to it. That was our critical facilities plan. Is so it just kind of all tied together. And then this is something that we have to do and submit to the EPA every 5 years. So every 5 years we're going to be going through the exercise of updating our critical facilities and then also updating our emergency response plan.
Okay, thank you, Rena. The water service regulations are in progress. These are going to replace the Water Service Ordinance 103. And for Kathy's benefit, she's probably going to remember during her orientation, this is our code, right? This is our service code, what we go by with regard to our rules. But they're old, they're dated. And so it's a huge undertaking. We've only gotten through half the draft with District Council, because by the time we got through half of it, I think maybe Rena, Monique, Julie, and I were on that call. We were cross-eyed and finally said, we can't do anymore. So we promise this is going to get before you. And the most interesting discussion, which we have even talked about with the city as well, is just when we get to the point about the service connections. If we're going to get to that question of requiring individual meters for individual housing. Okay. So anyway, stay tuned. That I don't even want to scare Monique, but we know this has got to come back. And it's a huge project that I think will be something that is a good legacy document, that it's been updated. And it's involved all staff members that have a role to play and have a section, because Monique's had to coordinate with them with regard to their sections. The records retention policy, these are B items, but they were already in progress, but they're so important. Many of you know that the boardroom was stockpiled with all the storage boxes, and Monique can help me out. with 280 boxes, as I recall, maybe more. She knows the exact number, I know. And she and an employee who was on light duty sat through and went through every single solitary box to verify that the information that that box had as an identity was inside that box. Okay. And then they were taped up and secured, and the policy that we're going to present to you, out of those, I believe there were about 50 boxes that are going to remain in our possession. The rest of them are going to be recommended for destruction. Most of them are 25, 30 years old, and they're old receipts, they're old records that are either available online. They're nothing that need to be kept except for those 50 boxes. So stay tuned. That policy too is more than halfway completed. But this task, we took advantage of the fact that this employee was on light duty and had to sit. We said, let's make him do this work and let's get through this so the rest of us don't have to work overtime and go through all those boxes. And if you've ever had to do that, it is not a fun project, okay? The rest of those projects are ones that are either in progress, and we've reported on the DACO project, and I know the ops team continues to use DACO with regard to some of the emergency repairs. In HR, the fourth strategic element, we've initiated the search for we've got the team on board, the CPS consultant team. I presented to you the organizational succession plan, and this month you're going to hear on January 27th another plan for reorg and staffing up in anticipation of 5 positions. And to be frank, we've got about 4 really good candidates right now, and I don't want to miss out on them, okay? They're hard to find, and we're going to interview them in a couple of weeks. So it's like I want to just be prepared to snag these folks up because it's just hard. We just had another one. He just turned his resignation in. The same guy I told you about this afternoon. He said, "Thanks, Renna. Thanks, Michael. He's leaving." Okay, and this old bird accepts resignations when people give him to her the second time. So we're definitely going to need to be prepared to staff up for these folks who are going to come in and leave based on whatever their family needs are, their personal career desires are. Our COVID prevention plan is in place. It's been updated. And right now I have a draft mandate policy. I mentioned it to the staff before I left. I mentioned it to them again today. And once I get through it, because district council was kind enough to draft it, I'm going to make sure I meet with them before I meet with staff, because these standards change every day. And the new ones today are the new ones with Cal OSHA and the California Department of Public Health references. I just want to make sure that we're staying on top of it. So along with the development of a mandate policy is just, we can't mandate the boosters yet, but I'm upgrading our wellness program, our employee wellness program, to provide incentives for employees to get boosters, because we have 5 people out with the coronavirus. They all got it on their own time or their own family events, but it's just a lot when people call in or they have to be gone and they're out for 10 days. So the employees received that uptick in the wellness program very positively. I'm also encouraging the flu shot, because if it's not one thing, it's another, and somebody comes to work sick. And we've been pretty well for these past couple of years because we've all been masked up, right? But now that people were out and about during the holidays and they're back in the larger group situations, I believe that's why we have this impact now with
So
people.
Tammy, question on the vaccination. I mean, you said we can't mandate boosters. By that, I'm not aware of any statutory limitation on it. If the board wanted to do that, we, as a board, I believe, could. Am I wrong in that understanding?
Julie, do you remember what she told us about the boosters?
I mean, I
Yeah,
know Joe Biden's bill got shot down today, but other than
I
that,
saw that. Yeah, the Supreme Court said no to that. But
yeah.
do you remember?
So I think, as just like with the vaccines, employers can mandate, but they have to bargain over the impacts. So you could technically mandate the booster, and then, but then what? If you don't get the booster, what are the repercussions? And then that's where, employees want to say, well, we don't want to be fired. It's the same, you go through the same thing as you do if you mandate the vaccines.
okay.
I promised to bring you guys it back because I said I wanted to report it out to you all this month before I bring it to them so that you see and hear because I'm a bargainer, I'm a negotiator, right? So there's give and take on this. So if we're going to take this and say, and now that I hear that we can add the boosters and they see that they're going to have these incentives and maybe some additional sick leave, then I just think it'll be positive. And then she's right. They have a right to go back as their bargaining group and either come back in and say, well, this is what we like about it. This is what we don't like about it. The pluses and the minuses. So I'll let you know how that goes.
Tammy,
Yes.
when an employee calls and says they have COVID, what do they present to you?
Rena, have they been sending you their positive test results?
It's been kind of hit and miss. I mean, most of the time what we're hearing is folks saying that they're feeling the symptoms, maybe a sore throat, some coughing, a fever, and so on. And we've been telling folks, look, we would rather that they stay home if they're being honest, and we're trusting them to be honest, that they're not feeling well. We'd rather them stay home and not come and spread the potential of COVID or even if it's just a flu all throughout the organization. And in some cases, some of the folks have taken a home test and it's told them, it's positive, and it says, well, then go get a test at one of the sites and get it confirmed or not confirmed, and then after that, if it's confirmed, and stay home until you're past a point of time where you can come back to work safely for yourself and the rest of us. And if it's negative, then, if you're still feeling sick, that's why you have sick time, but we just don't want people coming to work. I think we'd rather err on the side of being safe for the rest of us. If somebody's feeling sick, or or maybe if they're not quite feeling that well, I'd rather them just stay home and not take the risk of getting us all sick, because we're too small a group to have a bunch of people out and then have some sort of emergencies we've got to respond to and not having enough people to staff up.
But he's right. Some do show us the results or share their results with us, and we document that. And one thing based on the conversation, Lewis, that I had with you last night, that I haven't had a chance to meet with Rena on, is that I do think that we should document when people do test positive so that we just have it on record, because we have to report it anyway to our workers' comp carrier. Not that any of these people, so it's not like it's a something that was work related, but we definitely should, just have that information on hand. And then what Rena referred to is our COVID prevention plan says, here's a list of symptoms. If you have any one of these, stay home. And you come back to work when you're free 24 hours for a fever. Well, the bargaining unit approached me and asked me before I left, don't we think it should be, or no, I'm sorry, while I was off, don't you think it should be 24 hours of any of these symptoms on the list? So I want to talk to them about that with the mandated policy, because I do like to talk about it with the whole staff and say, do we all agree that we want it to be 24 hours of any one of these symptoms, or do we want to leave it as 24 hours with just the fever? So that's what they're doing. They're being respectful and responding to the policy, which doesn't say they may necessarily have COVID, but because they have one of these symptoms, they're staying home and they're honoring it. They may not necessarily stay home for the 10 days because they got a positive result, but and then some of the employees, a couple of the employees have gone and gotten lab tests. They've gone and gotten lab tests and they tested positive. So they in compliance with the policy stay home.
Yeah, but if an employee calls and say that they have the symptoms, and we're taking them at face value, this is we're trusting everybody is honest about this. I think if they say that they think they have COVID or whatever, we should record it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agreed with you. Yeah. And Rena and I, we just need to fine tune that. We just haven't had the chance today to chit chat about that. But I do think that's a very good point. And since they all just happened, it's going to be very easy to do that. Very easy. So far, we've been pretty good. These past couple of weeks, nobody's gone out. We had one last week, I'm sorry. And they're almost finished with their 10 days. Okay, anything else about COVID? And I discussed with you about the hiring new operators, and they've now resigned. So we're going to be back to the drawing board with these other two who are experienced and certified. So looking forward to interviewing them in a couple of weeks. The rest of this, we talked about policies. The next one is the final one is the financial management. The financial management policy is now back in my office, and it is in really good shape. It just needs to be finalized, and this is going to be the first priority for the temporary annuitant that I'll be bringing on board later next month. And it's really just probably 3/4 of the way complete. It's been before the finance committee twice, and it just needs the last little fine tuning before it gets brought probably one final time back to the finance committee, because now the faces have changed, and then be brought to the board for adoption. And I think you're going to be really proud of it. For the first time, we'll have this very comprehensive financial management policy with the district. And then I remember Lewis had brought up this, do a better job at bringing down the per capita water cost. It's so hard to calculate per capita water cost. And I always appreciate Lewis when he brings this up because of the way Bosca calculates their per capita fees, because they got to justify their jobs. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that to be insulting, but it's always nice to say it costs $1.85 for you to belong to Bosca. And our water rates are, $1,885 a unit. But I think that this district, recognizing the sale of the properties, paying down its liabilities, building up its reserves, was very fair in these past couple of years with no rate adjustments. And I know other agencies haven't been doing that. And so it'll be interesting when HF&H comes back to us to see now where we're falling on that, those schedules of where the district falls with regard to its rate schedule. This year, for information, I missed the full discussion because I was in Louisiana and I had an event to attend with my father and two of my brothers. SFPUC is proposing a wholesale water rate adjustment. And I don't understand why, because of all the precipitation that we just had. And because we're going to be in tier 2, the wholesale rate right now is $4.10 a unit. And as I recall, they're talking about going to $4.23. They're talking about a 13-cent for the wholesale rate. So we won't be ready with our 5-year rate plan. I would like to report to the full board that John Farnkoff, who was a principal at HF&H, has retired. And you remember him because he was the principal speaker with our team. So we've got to regroup with them and make sure that they're staying on target with our project. So I believe what we're going to have to work out, Rena and I'm going to be meeting with Nicole Sankula of Bosca next week so that I can get the full report on this proposed water rate increase by SFPUC. We will not know until April 1st. Okay, that's when they'll finally tell us yes or no. I believe we should put ourselves in a position to do a pass-through, and it means we're going to have to do a full-blown Prop 218 for a pass-through. And I just think, as your general manager, that's the responsible thing to do for July 1st, is to make sure that we're in line with what the wholesale water rate increase would be. So I'll stay tuned, and I'll report on that if anything changes. And after my meeting next week with Nicole, I'll let you know if I learn anything new or different, and present to you some different information if I learn anything new. The rate study, we're in the process of finalizing the bond refinancing. You heard a status report from the municipal advisor team, and then we're just pushing off a new issuance until probably August, September, when we'll be working on it again and preparing to present something to the board, and we'll be in a better position to show that we've spent the funds down, the 2016 funds. The miscellaneous fees is a project that is going to be handled by Misty and her team. And I tell you, the major issue in the miscellaneous fee schedule, they're not going to go up very much, the whole schedule, as you recall from years ago, but it's this fire protection fee charge. I don't remember if Brian and Kirk were on the board when we last discussed this, but it's going to be a lively discussion when we finally come up with the different options with regard to how we're going to approach that. So that's the only thing holding that and bringing that to the board. The water capacity charges is probably going to get out ahead of the rates. That team is moving, and we should see an updated report from them.
Tammy,
yeah, go ahead.
Go back. I mean, for the fire protection fees, we're talking about the fire protection connection fee or ongoing?
Okay,
for
so
the service.
so when folks residentially or commercially have a fire sprinkler system,
Correct.
they get charged this $6.50 or $1.25. Remember when we had this discussion and we didn't change, you
Correct.
guys didn't change the fees?
Okay, so service fee. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is how it's described currently in the ordinance, right? Fire. Yeah, it's called fire tech. It's really all around backflow devices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's why it's there.
Yep. Yep.
We can't find history. We're just going to be honest with you. We've done enough research on it. We just cannot find history of how or why this is developed. And it preceded you, Lewis, and it preceded, all of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we want to have a full blown discussion because some people with backflow devices are not getting charged.
Yep.
So it's like we've just got to figure out with the different options. And right now, I think as it stood the last time we reviewed it, there was about 3 different options. Do we want the full cost of the district's burden of the program because the San Mateo County administers it to be on all the customers who have backflow devices? That's option 1. Option 2, we see a public benefit to those people having those devices because of their fire protection and the fire protection systems. So how do I propose to you? Do I say that the district should absorb half the cost? And then another one is that we do it per device. Okay. So give us some time because it's going to be a very fun discussion with you all. Dan Bergman's doing this and, he has his opinions about, the amount of revenue it brings in, which right now I think it's like $18,000. And the program costs, as I recall, are like $40,000.
Yeah.
And he's just like, is $18,000 worth all this work? Yeah. Why should we just give up revenue if we know it's justified? If we know that this program is costing us money and that maybe some of the other ratepayers are subsidizing it, but for those people's development, they might not have triggered the fire sprinkler requirement, right? So anyway, that's the one thing that's we need to
Okay.
regroup and make sure we have plenty of options for you guys. It should be fun. And then the last but not least is the district treasurer process. So remember, you approved the request for proposals. We got 4 submittals in. So I was going to ask tonight, I thought that it would probably go to your finance committee first, or does the full board want all 4 proposals and make a decision? I'm really asking that question, but the 4 folks that we sent it to and we posted it and all that, we got 4 submittals. So I was going to ask you tonight, do you want that to go to your board finance committee first for them to vet it and decide to make a recommendation and then you bring whoever to interview with you? Or do you all want to just look at them all next month?
Either way, I'm on the hook, so I'm not going to say anything.
I mean, I just wanted to see if I got consensus because I certainly didn't want to make a decision on, a board appointment because this is a board appointment potentially. And they all actually, as I recall, they all applied for both. They all applied for the accounting services and the district treasurer, which is really nice for you that you're going to get the option with all 4 of them. And they're all, I mean, they're pretty good proposals. I didn't go through them entirely, line by line, but I was impressed that we got 4. Do you have any druthers that I go to the finance committee first with them?
Through the chair, Kirk, if it's okay.
Well, I think they probably should go to the finance committee, but whether or not we would limit what they're actually, whether we would actually make a suggestion or recommendation, and that would go to the board. That'd be similar to what the staff might do. So we'd be advising
I know
staff.
that Matt wanted to say something, so quickly before I turn it over to Matt, there's only 4 candidates. So if it goes to the finance committee, chances are that we'll probably have a draft rating of them before it goes to the final board. If there were, 40 candidates, that's different, but there's only 4, so that's my comment.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is that because it includes the treasurer, which is technically somebody that reports to the board, we might want to, as a board, vet the whole package. The financial part of it is kind of could go to the finance. You're smirking, Lewis. I can't wait to hear what snarky comment you have to say, but that would be my sense.
I was going to say, Matt and I have been on the board too long. It's scary. So
yeah, exactly.
So
that would be my 2 cents worth. Is that A is 4 and B it does include the treasurer position, which is a position that reports to the board So that would be my preference, is that just bring them all and we go through it. But I'm happy to. I'm one of 5.
And I see Kathy nodding her head. She liked that too.
Yeah, I think with only 4 candidates that we just look at all of them.
Okay. And Brian, I think you were nodding your head too.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So by the end of this month, I will get them all printed for you, unless you want e-versions, and we will get them delivered. And then it will likely show up on next month's agenda to review them and tell us how you want the process to go down, if you want interviews. And then I'll let the candidates know, after next month's meeting. Okay. So stay tuned. You'll get a packet with their submittals. Okay. I was just very happy that you got 4 of them and that they applied for both. And then I just attached the California Conservation Way of Life brochure just so it stays out in front of us. And then Brian had asked me a question before the meeting tonight, and I really appreciated it, about why I mentioned the ones that we haven't. Let me go back to my staff report. I'm sorry, I can't do it fast because I usually make myself go dizzy here. In my staff report, I mentioned the items that we had no progress on. It's hard to pick the exact wording, but in these B priorities, we have, so B-2.2 Explore Peninsula Energy. This is that potential pipe step down. I really wanted to ask Rena and Jubin, and maybe Matt was in this one. I thought we already made a presentation to the board about this, that we didn't have a transmission main that could support enough energy to make this feasible. Can you guys help me out? Do you remember? And I don't mean to put you guys on the spot. Do you remember Jubin or Rena or Matt?
Peninsula Clean Energy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we explored it with them, and to make it worthwhile, they needed something like, I don't know, 1,000 GPM. Don't quote me. And we
Yeah.
looked at it and go, we don't have anything close to that big. You need to be talking distribution level, not, But it was a while ago, and
Yeah.
it was more fact finding on their part than it was anything else, really. And then I think where I recall leaving it was that they were going to come back if they thought it was worth exploring more. And I don't know whether you guys met with them after that or not.
I recall that we provided them some information. Michael Anderson from staff, went through our archives and data and so on and provided them with information, and then it just kind of seemed to drop off. So I think as Matt was describing, that they saw that it wasn't there, so it just said, okay, that's it, and just kind of cut their losses.
I track this on an annual basis just because technology changes. And so it hasn't gotten the pipe sizes and the velocities, and has not gotten down to the sizes where districts of our size would make sense. It's more than 12 inches in pipe size and velocity. So it is trending towards us, but it's just not there yet. But I do track this, Tammy, and once it gets to something feasible for us, I will we'll certainly bring them in for a brown bag, or start talking.
I appreciate that. Thank you guys for that report. And the electric vehicle opportunities, we're always looking at those opportunities. Right now we have 1, 2, 3 hybrids. We don't have fully electric ones. And we definitely have had some discussions about some of the trucks. We just have to be very careful because we have to have towing capacity with the trailers and some of the equipment that we have to move around town. So I know Ren and his team look at those opportunities and those options with electric vehicles. But right now we're not in the market for new vehicles or replacement vehicles, but it always stays on our radar.
So
The solar, sorry, go ahead.
real quick on that one, only because I'm in the throes of a green fleet changeover right now. Is the major concern that I have is not so much that, but how do we continue to provide services in an emergency and a power grid being down, post earthquake, all that kind of stuff, where we have to think that through. And so it's emergency generation on top of it. It's more complex for, I think, an organization like us, where in an earthquake, where we're out of power for weeks, we have to continue to be able to drive, right? So as we do that and think about it, I mean, maybe there's a pathway forward there, but I would want to understand that, I think, as a board member before we make a commitment to start converting our trucks over to battery electric. Not that I'm opposed to it overall from a environmental standpoint, it's more the operational reliability part.
Agreed. Thank you for that.
Just a quick comment.
Sorry.
A quick comment on that, just to piggyback. But the latest snowstorms we had up in the mountains, the roads were littered with electric vehicles. They ran out of charge, and nobody could bring in a gallon of gas to fill the gas tank because there's no charges at all, and they had to be towed, all of them. So that, at least that's what I heard.
That's an
So
interesting point.
yeah, so in case of emergency, obviously I don't think that the infrastructure of our towns are there yet, where where you can have the possibility of recharging in an emergency situation where all other power are out as well. So we need to. I agree that we need to think this one through.
And then the next two have to deal, the solar opportunities are where we see in the Dairy Lane Rehab project. We just haven't had a chance to get to that one yet. But I also wanted Rena to talk about how we already have solar at our storage tanks. And do we have it at other facilities? I only know because Brent has had to replace some of the panels. Can you talk about that a little bit, Rena?
It has to do with the transmission of our AMI system. The transmitters that send information back to the Dairy Lean operations. We have backup power supplies there, and the backup batteries are just continually trickle charged using solar panels. So that's how we're using solar panels out at reservation sites or tank sites or reservoir sites, tank sites, or any kind of generation station, or even out in the middle of a neighborhood where we might have an AMI transmitter. You might see a solar panel up there that's just making sure that in the event that we lose power, the battery backup will continue to send the information to Dairy Lane.
Thank you, Rena. And then we always, in fact, even I got out ahead of it before Brian, this meeting with regard to the divestment with companies and their greenhouse compliance when we had the presentation by PARS last month. And so when we did our staff meeting with them a couple of months prior to that, we're continuously just ensuring that they know that that's an interest of this board's, and that, it's going to be asked about them with regard to those investments. So we want you to know that even though there's really nothing more to report than the fact that we stay on top of that from that compliance with regard to PARS, because we know it's going to be asked, and we continue to communicate with them. And then the last item is the actuarial report for the OPEB. It's due every 2 years, so this year we'll be getting that accomplished. So that's the reason why there was really no progress on it, but it is one of the B priorities. And that steps us through the entire strategic plan, whether there was achievements made or accomplishments, or they're in process. And that was what we had as your report with regard to what the district got accomplished in 2021.
So does anybody have any questions about the significant accomplishments report? We actually have another item in terms of reviewing the strategic plan, but I'm not sure exactly what we're going to accomplish on that.
Usually we just, if there's any other elements that are any other action items that the board wants us to pursue in 2022, then this is where the board has an opportunity to say, let's revise the strategic plan and add this item, or make this an A priority, or let's add this to the list. And then you guys always look at your director assignments from year to year. So I'm going to scroll down to the strategic plan just in case there's any comments or recommendations. There we go. Here's element number 1.
So does
Through the
anyone
chair, I have a comment or question, Kirk.
Sure.
So for strategic element number 1, I think because we're all moving to district-based elections, it's kind of a tricky thing because I don't know what the city's going to do. I don't think they've been delivered maps quite yet, but for the district-based elections and the way that we're going to be divided, and also the way the city is going to get divided, I don't know if there's a way to see if we could kind of all be on the same page so people aren't in one district here and one district there. It may be completely unfeasible. I have no idea. But just as we're moving down this path, I was just curious about, how that looks if you're having conversations with Action. I think they just started talking about it last 2 nights ago. But so we are definitely ahead of the city with that, but just something that I've been thinking about in terms of how it looks for our constituents and that who is also the city's constituents.
It's a valid point, Kathy, because when I did talk to Afshin, the last meeting, they weren't going to do it for the November 2022 elections, and see, we are. And then so I do want to confirm that, but that's what they bargained with that attorney, because they got shanked, meaning that attorney reached out and said, you got to do this. And they bargained to say, as long as we can do it for the next election. That was my understanding with my last meeting. That's why they didn't start and get out ahead of it. Every other water district that serves a city, their boundaries are not the same. None of them are the same. None of them are even close.
Yeah, I didn't think so, but it was just something that's been on my mind. So I thought I'd just ask the question.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's good that ours looks pretty good, really. I mean, very balanced based on the population, that it'll be really helpful for Belmont. And we'll definitely share it with them. I'll make sure they get the notice and all that good stuff for the public hearings.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I'll confirm with Ashton when I meet with him in early March.
But Tammy, but our boundaries are not that much different, are they?
Well, we have some census blocks in San Carlos. And then because we have that unincorporated strip, it's going to happen before the city annexes that, right? So it's the unincorporated San Mateo County that's in our service district. So it's just they are a little different. I mean, they're not just all of Belmont.
Population-wise, it's almost negligible, So.
True, very true. Yeah.
Kirk, I had a question or two.
Okay.
If I may. Regarding the Peninsula Clean Energy, should we delete that? Is that not alive anymore?
I think it's a good point to do that.
You can still keep the electric vehicle thing as a possibility.
Absolutely.
I'm wondering, based on what Matt was saying, whether it might be possible to switch some of our fleet and keep the other parts.
I'm not saying it's not possible. It's just that you need backup you need a backup generator to then power all your vehicles when you're driving around if we're out of power for a week, right? So we have to think about it in terms of, we're in San Mateo, we're looking at it for the police department, but if we're going to do it, we're going to buy a new backup generator that will then, in a power outage, power all the vehicles. So there's a way to do it. It's just that you're going to have to maintain and permit another standby generator, and
they're expensive.
That's $100,000 just to if it's a mobile unit. And then depending on how many vehicles, I mean, PD has 85. So how am I going to have a generator to power up 85 vehicles to keep them going, and they're running on 24/7, cycles and all that. So I just want to make sure it's not. There's a way, possibly, and we just need to be careful on how we do it, right? I think maybe it's the battery electrics are the ones that are the staff pool vehicles, and the trucks we stay on diesel, and we can talk about what kind of fuels and everything, or hybrids or whatever else is coming out.
And the 3 that we own are hybrids. They're hybrid vehicles.
Well, there's 1 hybrid and 2 plug-in hybrids.
I'm sorry. That's right. There is that difference. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I don't know what's buzzing up on my screen here.
I wonder if that might also be a potential partnership with the city on a backup mobile generator.
Question for Renee: Don't we already have backup generators at our pump stations?
Oh yeah, we have a big one here at Dairy Lane, to power the building, and we've got a huge one at Tunnels. What kind of capacity they would have, or how that would translate into is like Matt was saying, charging up or having a charging station. I don't know. We've not looked into that, but it's something that we could take a
charging
look at and
stations are
find
not
out.
cheap either. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we could take a look at while, like at Dairy Lane, when we do the rehab or the remodel there, to find out, is that current generator back there on Dairy Lane only large enough to provide power to the building, or could it be also used to provide electricity for plug-in hybrid cars or battery vehicles of some sort?
We also
Smaller and are just there to operate the pumps at a pump station.
We also have the backup generators at the pump stations that Rena was talking about. But if you run into emergencies, as you guys are aware, the board members are aware, is the fuel for the generators, right? So you're running generators to produce electricity to charge up your car, but you're burning through the fuel, which is in short supply after an emergency. So it's, yeah, the considerations are great, as Director Zuka said. It's just something to think through, I guess.
And we're kind of going through this. I mean, I'm not sure this is all in the strategic element, external relationships and customer service, but since we're all talking about it, the one thing that we are converting over to in San Mateo, and we have our own fuel dispensing system, and so we have control over it, is the use of it's not biodiesel, but it's renewable diesel. So it's made from non-fossil fuels, basically non-fossil sources. And several cities have converted over. It's basically the same price. It's chemically identical to fossil-based diesel, but you're still burning things. It's still got a carbon footprint, but it's less than the fossil side of things because it's starting from an organic source from the research that we've done into it. So Fremont's gone over, Berkeley's gone over, and a bunch of other cities are starting to make that switch to try to keep, because then your equipment, like your backhoes, can still be running diesel, but it's at least a smaller footprint. Something that we might want to consider in terms of overall. But I'm sure we don't have our own fuel dispensing system, so we probably.
Well, we do have our own fuel dispensing. We have small storage tanks there on site for diesel and gasoline, and we purchase our fuels from Valley Oil. So I'd be curious to find out, Matt, where you guys are purchasing the fuel, because that sounds interesting.
Valley Oil provides diesel.
Okay.
I like it. I like that.
Kirk, if through the chair, should that be included then? Renewable diesel is part of that strategic plan element, researching that along with electric vehicles?
I'm happy to add that. I like that. So renewable fuels, non-fossil sources.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I'll add that.
Put that right next to customer service on the thing that's on the screen right now. I'm just kidding.
I'll put it like
I'm not
right
sure
here.
what part of the strategic plan we're talking about. We're just talking.
I know. We are, but I'll put it with the proper
Okay.
element.
Maybe
I will. I promise.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, it is. It's down there.
Resource management.
There you go.
Be happy to put it in the right category. It's a great discussion.
And the other comment I'll just finish up is one of those B priorities, the climate divestment, is maybe we can let that percolate for another year or so, but that seems to be happening more and more. Maybe we'll get some more examples over this next year. And then I'd be interested in checking in with our consultants, and if they aren't interested, maybe that'll be time to look for a different set of consultants that might be interested. So that's just my thought.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
And
Any other suggestions on the strategic plan?
So I guess procedurally, a lot of times we'll have gone through and looked at the elements and the goals and objectives and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, believe me, I've seen this thing a whole bunch of times. I'm not saying that I want to drag everybody through that all again, but we do kind of have, I think, I don't know. My memory might be failing me. Maybe you were here last year, Kathy. That's how much time is blurred for me in this last year. So you could probably convince me that you were at the last strategic plan meeting, and I would fall for it. I don't know if there's any desire to go through this a little bit more sequentially and talk about what's up there and have a larger conversation about it, because we do have a new board member on here. this is the scaled down version of what we created 15 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever it was. So I think
It wasn't that long.
it was, but I don't know how long it was ago, but it seems like
About
forever.
10 years. It was
About
because I've been here 10 years, so it was right
Yeah.
before I got here. Yeah.
So anyway, I guess I just want to toss out that, you know, do we, while we're just, instead of taking shots at it, do we want to go through this a little bit more systematically, or and just hit each one, review them real quickly? Maybe, I don't know, Tammy, you can read them out, we can comment on
Sure.
them or whatnot. But
Sure.
or Kathy might say, look, I read it all cover to cover, I don't need that, Matt. I'm just wanting to sort of call attention to the process.
No, I'm happy for us to kind of do a little bit more of a deep dive, but Tammy did go over this with me in my first orientation meeting. Like I had like this much paperwork that she gave me.
I think, you know, our next green effort is to have a board orientation.
Yeah. No, what I was thinking actually, you know, because I know that a couple of years ago we kept on loading and loading, you know, on the stuff, that we have to keep in mind that if we continue with the way we're going, especially having a little bit of a challenge, having a full staff working every time, you know, to put in the priorities that you know that you have a very slim chance of achieving, is just setting yourself up for failure. I think that you know, this would be the year that we should make sure that we accomplish what we have, instead of, you know, inventing things that we don't really need. And then, you know, if something comes along the way, we'll add it. But just to add it in there and load up the plate, it may not be a very smart thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We have a transition going on, so, you know.
Yeah, I was going to add, Matt, you had mentioned last year about this being like maybe a little too skimpy, you know, based on what it was. And there's probably a happy medium somewhere in the middle. It's going to be a good thing to dive into with your new general manager next year when they develop the next 2-year plan, right? And that helps them create their vision for the organization as well with you. But I know we have enough to do in 2022, because
Right.
there's things that get added to the list that, you know, obviously come up, especially with all this development. I mean, hearing that today, we just want to get a handle on what is all of that. I mean, what is out there, you know, so that we can see that list. You see Rena's report every month, but what is that, you know? So, but I was going to scroll, if you don't mind. It seemed to me like when I was doing my report, there was a couple of these goals that were a little interesting to me that I thought, that needs to be updated the next strategic plan. But maybe I brought it up during the development of it. I think maybe I did, because I think we did a lot of this. Do you remember when we updated this last year? We went through all the goals and objectives, and we changed and revised some of them. So I think I just wanted to scroll really quickly to ensure that they got caught, and I think they did. I just wanted to remind you of that you all see how we have on this page where we maintain the board finance committee. We went through all these when you developed your, I mean, I'm just letting you know that.
The 2020 urban water management plan is still on one of the 8 priorities. That could probably go.
Oh, you're so right. Now that it's completed.
So I think it is worthwhile going through them, you know, if nothing else for the benefit. I don't know that we need to read them all, but that would be my sense, and take a little bit of time to see if there's anything on the 8 priorities that we want to add or delete, and move a B to an A, and then call it good. I agree with Lewis that this next year we're going to be recruiting a new GM and getting and transitioning, and that's enough probably on top of the normal day job. And so maybe we're judicious about what we add.
So these in strategic element number 1 still are in progress. All of these. None of these here in both categories are completed. It makes sense to leave as is from staff's perspective. Unless the board wants to add any.
One comment is this strategic plan is meant to be a 2-year plan, and we're in the middle of it. So the expectation is that most of these items that are, what do you want to call it, on our A categories are things that are going to go away and may not be anywhere near, will be complete for the next strategic plan, and they are in process. And we're getting sort of a snapshot of where we are now.
Correct.
And so keeping it relatively simple and not changing it too much in the middle, unless there really is something that has come along that we should be looking at. For instance, the new state regs on housing and what effect that's going to have on city planning and so on, and whether or not that affects us. We know that it is going to affect us, but whether or not we need a separate category for it or a strategic goal for it is a question. We know it is going on. Tammy, I had one comment on this, and I think because of the fact that we didn't get to do your significant accomplishments report it was scheduled for originally in September, if I remember correctly.
October. Yeah, September, but then it got pushed to October, and then it got pushed off because the agenda was too full.
So tonight's session has been much more about accomplishments and reviewing what's happened in the past year and that type of thing, as opposed to the strategic plan related portions of it, where otherwise we might have spent a little more time just looking at the particular items on the strategic plan and less to do with a list of all of the accomplishments.
Well, every year I do the accomplishments. They're tied to the strategic plan. So everything that I mentioned tonight, they are tied to an element. That's why I actually listed them in the report. Some of them weren't. You're absolutely right. But I really tried to highlight the ones that were tied to action items in the strategic plan so that I made it not be off topic, if you will, for this meeting.
The other thing I think we have to keep in mind is that while this might be a transition year and all of that, the general manager does her self-performance evaluation based upon the adjustments that we make in the strategic plan every year. So while it's a 2-year plan, if we don't make any changes, it's going to be the self-evaluation is going to be against exactly the same thing, right? So we have the ability to update it whenever we want, really. In my experience so far on the board, we haven't refrained from updating a strategic plan in the middle of a 2-year plan just because someone said it was a 2-year plan. Primarily because we did spend a lot of time and effort to make sure that this was absolutely mirrored what the GM performance evaluation was intended to accomplish. So I think my sense would be, I would encourage us to make sure that whatever is on here is what we expect to be having a conversation about next October and November with Tammy about her performance. And if it's not on here, we're not going to be having that conversation other than sort of normal day-to-day ops. So that would be the only, I guess, the counter to the concept of we're in the middle, right? Yes, we're in the middle, but we can also make it the 22-23 strategic plan if we wanted to.
And when I bring it back in strike through. Okay. So I don't just eliminate without you knowing that what got deleted. And if there's something added, it's in strike through version. It sometimes looks a little messy, but I'd rather the board fully see that they do agree with those revisions. So when it comes back, we still have an opportunity, even when it comes back next month, to say, oh, you know what, why don't we tweak that? And then I end up sending out the final once the board approves it.
I mean, for me on this one, I think this is the first time, just since we're talking priority, this is the first time tier 2 has ever been triggered in my career. And so, I mean, I'd like to understand how Bosco is implementing tier 2, how that's all, how that's going, and that we are appropriately monitoring, not only the regulations that are changing at the state, but the regulations that change at the state are almost irrelevant when it comes to our water supply. And our water supply is then affected now by this tier 2 that's being implemented because, San Francisco declared a water shortage emergency. They didn't do that in the last drought. They did it this time, and that allowed them to then implement the tier 1 and tier 2. So I think that to me on the resource management side of things is a brand new thing that we've not done before. And I'd be interested in hearing how that goes, and I don't know how that ties to a priority other than manage the tier 2 process, understand the tier 2 process and its implementation, and making sure that we're being, and I know you will, appropriately represented at BOSQA as that gets rolled out. Because everybody for the first time is going to be seeing, some people probably under tier 2 get more water. It's a ridiculous spreadsheet. I mean, I've played with that spreadsheet before. And some people, we have 13%. I bet you, I guarantee you, Hillsborough probably has 30%.
So the highest one is Parissima at 38%.
There you go. So Parissima, because of the way the math works, we got 13, they got 38. So anyway, this is the first time that's going to happen. And how are the different agencies taking it? What are the issues that are coming up? And understanding that, because there was some talk way back, I don't know, 8 years ago about changing the tier 2, and the concept of getting 26 agencies together and coming up with a new tier 2 was too daunting, and it died an ugly death, right? So that might have been pre you, Tammy, but I don't know. I can't remember.
It was right when I got here. And so the tier 2 that is in place right now, I expected that we were going to talk about that for 4 years, like we did the minimum purchase requirement. We talked about it for exactly 3 months. Boom, it's before BOSQA. BOSQA's approving it. And I was like, wait, what?
No
90 days?
Yeah. Well, that's because no changes were made and everybody adopted it.
What I like about that discussion, and I actually liked what Kirk said. I do like that should be added as an age priority because it's so important. And in March, when Nicole is scheduled to be here because of the water supply agreement amendment with regard to the minimum purchase, because we have the board governing body has to adopt it, I'm going to actually have an update on tier 2 implementation while Nicole's here. And in that way she can explain that and you can hear all that, because this general manager and 25 other representatives went cross-eyed, and the meeting went on for 2, 3, 4 hours when we saw all the different spreadsheets and how they calculated all this mess. Okay, so that's a great point, and I like it. And then I liked Kirk's comment about the housing element and the RENA factors and how they impact water supply. So it could be a B priority. It is, and it's a priority no matter what, but we are staying on top of that, and we are coordinating that with the city and the whole water supply. So I like both of those. I mean, I'm not a board member, but I like both those to be in your strategic plan, because they are being worked on and they are actively paid attention to by staff. B priority. Okay, are we ready to move on to the next one? Is infrastructure management and operations. This has the CIP, the RRA and the EOP under the A priorities has been completed. And so the B priorities for Dairy Lane and the records retention are still outstanding. And then the CIP is ongoing. Do we want to list under, no, I think maybe that's under finance. Yeah, that is under finance about a new debt issuance, yeah.
Could I ask a question as to where we are? I mean, one of the objectives is to develop and / maintain SOPs. Do we have SOPs in documented format that all of the ones that we need?
That's a continual process, Matt. We do have probably a couple dozen SOPs. And typically when the supervisors are meeting with staff, on an annual basis to develop some objectives for their evaluation, we typically ask them to prepare an SOP based on, what it is that they do out there. And what we were getting into a habit before COVID hit, but we're going to start trying back again, is at least on the operations side, to meet like maybe once or twice on the Fridays during a month and go over a particular SOP and see if it's still valid or if it needs to be tweaked. But yes, we have developed a number of SOPs since I've been here, and there's probably a couple dozen related to operations. And then there's a few others that I think even in the administrative side that have been developed over the last few years too.
So that was a partial answer, because I think part of it was, do we have all the SOPs we need? And if our objective is to have and maintain SOPs in accordance with best management practices, then I would say we probably don't have a priority up here that is measuring our tracking against that objective. So I don't know, I'll toss out there that if we were going all through all the effort to update a CIP and records retention and all that kind of stuff, and the board feels that there's a goal and an objective on maintaining SOPs with respect to best management practices, maybe we ought to have something on here, B level, probably not a high priority, which is developing a comprehensive set of SOPs and then the list, and then preparing against them that we can then track in annual performance and progress updates as we go forward, so we can get a report out on that.
Yep, I love it. My staff knows how much I harangue them about SOPs, so I love it. My intention this
It doesn't have to be
year.
written in-house either. I mean, like literally right
Yeah,
now, we have a
yeah,
consultant in San Mateo coming on to write an SOP for a Vector truck
yeah,
and how to
yeah,
operate and maintain it. You know, and it's
yeah.
$3,000 to go write an SOP. It can be done outsourced or insourced.
We have a variety of them. I mean, some of the staff, they are so talented with them. They do screenshots, and Michael has done one for the whole SCADA. I mean, some are just amazing. Mine are number one, open up Novus Agenda. Number two, sign in. Number three, when I'm doing the agenda prep, okay? And because we're at the start of a year, I'm doing all the SOPs for the GM for start of the year stuff, end of the year stuff, so that the GM knows what this GM did in January, just so that they have it. So it's an SOP, and mine are just very simplified. But you're absolutely right. We could go to the extent of having a consultant, but then they'd have to have us. And so we're the best ones to prepare them. And so I will say that I do believe we have more than 24, because I've seen them on the backs of performance evaluations, because every employee is expected to have performance objective as one of their performance objectives, have an SOP. And then as part of the exit plans for a couple of retiring employees, they have to do an SOP. I want to see an SOP on their job. You know, what's their job, the front desk, let me see your SOPs.
Yep,
So I'm just letting
exactly.
you know that that's part of this year's efforts. So I love having it as a priority, because I get to explain to staff it's now a priority. I expect to see it. I will be held accountable. So I
That's
love it.
exactly what I was thinking. Matt said it better, and but I was going to tie it in because we were just hearing from you about how many people are in line to retire, and that is going to be hopefully the seamless, as seamless as can be, handover to whoever is going to come. So good.
Great feedback. Okay, moving on to number 4, HR management. So in the A, priorities, that's still in progress, the org chart and stages of impact. I mean, I presented it, but this next reorg will show you that it's going to be implemented. The development and implementation of the COVID prevention plan, that's going to be ongoing. And the B priorities, this tool for the employee performance review. Let me work on that one. Okay, so the tool is super comprehensive, and it's just very complicated in my opinion, and it wasn't launched very well. So we either got to revisit it and revamp it. So I would like to leave it here, because it is in response to what the bargaining unit asked for during the last round of negotiations. And I'd like to hear from them and just say, are you guys going to use this or not? Because I've always thought it was too complicated. And then here's where those major policies were with regard to the board, the personnel manual, which they've always asked for, and the conflict of interest code and the rule of the board and the annual planning schedule. May I offer to add what Monique and I have been talking about, and we haven't had a chance to meet with Rena on, is we are preparing a schedule of your policies, and when we feel it is best, like in almost a Gantt chart format, to update them, because every policy can't be updated every 2 years, otherwise staff's never going to be able to keep up. So we're listing all your major policies and going to make suggestions, bring it to the board for consideration and approval. Here's your schedule of policies. Does this meet with your approval? You want to see the personnel manual every 3 or 4 years. You want to see the CIP update every 4 years. Some of these are regulatory, like the conflict of interest code and all that, but your rule of the boards, how often do you want to see that? So if you'll indulge us, we'd like to put together a schedule for you that shows all your policy, that your major policy documents, and see if you agree with where we think you should be looking at updating them. And
I
we
think
thought that'd be helpful.
I think we need to add on here that you need to prepare a policy on policies.
A schedule. How about a schedule for policies? Okay.
Well, I say that only slightly tongue in cheek because San Mateo literally has a document entitled Policy on Policies.
We don't have a name for it, right, Monique? We just have a bunch of hen scratching right now and all the different major policy documents. I don't think we've named it yet. So we'll add that to the B priorities and encompass all of those because there's way more than that. And this one's the big one, the financial management. So in the A priorities, your FMP, that's what we call it, the financial management policy, is in progress and will be presented this year. Doing a better job at bringing down the per capita water cost. I don't even know how to calculate that yet. I love Lewis when he brings that one up.
Not that I have any problem with the concept. Can I suggest maybe a slightly rewording that one other than do a better job?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know. Let's set a slightly higher bar than that. Lewis, like,
Well, it was a very delicate suggestion that I put in, and I just didn't want to step on too many toes. But we all know what the bottom line is, because that is what people see, that is what people talk about, that is what people compare. And when we are comparing ourselves with other districts and other agencies, that always comes up, but yeah, if you have any suggestion for a different wording, knock yourself out.
And something that's measurable, right? Because it's just.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, all this is saying is you just got to do better. That's all. Not asking much.
I'm trying to think of how it could be worded.
We don't have to sort it out tonight. I was just.
Yeah, let me think about some language, and then I'll run it by Lewis. How's that, right? And then we'll put it in draft format for that. Okay.
Good.
The rate study's still in progress, and the bond financing we've reported we'll be pursuing in the fall. And then the B priority, Brian commented earlier about the divestments and leaving it as is so that we can continue to stay at least on pars. The water capacity charges, I think, will be the first thing that will come to the board with regard to approval. Appointing your district treasurer and a professional services contract should be happening in this first 4 months. And then the GASB actuarial report, like I stated, we'll get that going underway here probably in the March timeframe. It may be that it's this fiscal year in, so it may be a little bit later. I've just got to get with a few of the consultants that we'll get prices from. And that's all on financial management.
I just had a question in terms of how this looks, because we are going to do the appointing the district treasurer and the accounting services contract. Does that shift to an A priority since that's happening, or does it just stay kind of as a B priority since it's part of a 2-year plan? Right, because it's happening this year, right?
It's happening. So as they stated before, this is a 2-year plan. When we decided on these columns of A and B priorities, we used to put years on them, but we didn't do that this time. So to me, these could happen anytime in the 2-year period, as was previously mentioned. So it's up to the board.
I think that's a good point. When we wrote this last year, I don't know that we knew everything we knew now. In terms of people leaving and retiring and all the things that have happened over the last year. So I agree. I mean, that feels like an A priority to me. And only because, as Kathy mentioned, it's happening this year. So if I think we would be, if we're sitting down and saying the A's are what we should be talking about in October and November, then that's something I think we're talking about. Did we successfully execute against that one?
I'll be moving the GASB one over there to A as well because it's going to be due this summer. So.
And then I did have while we're talking about growth and all that kind of stuff, A-5.3 on water rates and the Prop 218 process. I know we have our demand offset charge, but that was something that was intended to get us money and to offset and, considering water supply as an asset, just like a pipe, in light of growth and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I wonder whether or not it's worth at some point in the future re-asking ourselves the question of what that demand offset charge looks like and whether or not we ought to be reevaluating it. That's been on the books for quite a while.
It's actually being reevaluated by the RDN team because
The
they said there's not a lot of agencies doing water demand offset fees.
It's okay.
So
Doesn't
yeah,
bother
and
me at
that's
all.
I told them we're not bashful about being out front. Okay, so that is being evaluated though, Rena. I don't remember all the details about it, but stay tuned when they make their next presentation, and we'll make sure that they're up to date on that. Okay, so great point. We brought it up too when they brought it up. And that's all of the strategic plan. These basic measures of success, we went through these too when we did it. Did they need to change? Remember, we took some of the elements out of the old strategic plan and transferred them over here to these. So these stay because they're expected as basic measures to be for the GM and the staff to be aware of. And they're busted out by the specific strategic elements as well. So unless there was going to be some discussion about changing any of these, there's 3 pages or 2.5 pages of them. And then the fun part, if you're ready to move on.
I guess we are.
Okay, if we are, then I guess we can go on to director assignments. Tammy, this was not part of the paper package,
Oh, was it not in there?
It was in mine.
is it? Okay.
Is it not
I,
in yours?
I have it
Maybe I
also.
misplaced it. Yep.
It is
Page
on my,
27, page 20. Hey, we have staff making sure those page numbers are correct, and Laura is pretty darn organized, okay?
no,
It's
no,
page
no.
27.
I have it. I have it too. Yeah.
Huh.
So we just
'Cause I have
listed,
26 and then it went directly to the California Way of Life.
oh,
No,
really?
okay.
So we listed the 2021 committees. And then the one that we added, Monique added based on the December meeting, was just this ad hoc committee for the GM recruitment, being Kirk and Matt. So thank you, Monique, for being on top of that and getting that on the committee list. I so appreciate that. So this is up for discussion by the board if you want to make any changes. Since you're all here, you don't get to appoint people who aren't here. You've got to face your colleagues this year, but at least you have the opportunity to let staff know if you're going to be making any changes to your committee list. Let me reduce it a little bit so you can see it all on one page. There we go.
I guess the only question I have is that the Happy Hydrant Ad Hoc Committee was really something that I think Director Warden had kind of a personal interest in. I don't know whether the rest of the board feels that that's something that, we should be spending our time on. I'm personally not interested in it, but I think that there are preservation, societies, not board of directors, and I don't know that we need a standing committee for that one. That would be the only thing. Other than that, I think I don't have any other comments.
And just so you know, nobody has brought anything to our attention about that committee in quite some time. Just that young man.
No,
From
as a
Hallmark.
matter of fact, it happened outside this committee, totally outside this committee. It was just an initiative by a young man who wanted to do this project, and
That's
we
right.
helped him out. He did a very good job. I saw it. I was there when he was doing it, and I thought he was doing a good job, and we encouraged him. But that was it, basically. So personally, I'm not that
You
interested.
single-handedly bypassed our committee.
Huh?
You
No.
Yeah,
bypassed the committee.
Yeah, he
No,
didn't
no,
reach
no,
out to Dave Warden. He came to us. Yeah, he came to us.
He didn't read. No, but he came. He presented to the group here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's all he did. Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I was going to suggest deleting that one.
That's good because I was warned at the beginning to not get roped into being the person on that committee.
I told her to watch out. I was honest with her. You better watch out. You're gonna have your name put on the happy hydrant card.
Oh, we're not that evil.
I appreciate you being honest about that, Kathy.
Yeah. We have paintbrushes for you, Kathy.
Yeah.
You do not want me painting anything.
It's okay. It's like color by numbers. You just have to try to figure out what color it was originally. That's the hard part.
So
So it
it
sounds-
becomes part of the operations staff or office
Yeah.
staff is going to coordinate that if necessary.
If necessary, we don't have the staff capacity right now to be doing that program. I'm going to leave it on the legacy list, to be honest with you. They were done in 1976 for the bicentennial, am I remembering correctly?
Yes,
So that
yes.
means the next, that's 100 years. So the next one would be 2076. So the GM in 2076 probably needs to be concerned about the happy hydrants. But, respectfully, if somebody approaches us, we're going to do the same thing we did with the young man, okay? Because we really appreciated that he wanted to make the effort. He wanted to learn some leadership, and he did a good job. I thought he did a really good job presenting to you guys. So, are there any other
Tammy-
changes? We just changed
Tammy,
2020.
on the Harbor Industrial Association, we said that all of us could go, or
Yes. So the way the Harbor Industrial Association goes is every year we pay $500 for our membership. Okay, that's what it is. It's $500. Is it $500? Maybe it's $200 a person, and we pay for three or four people. But what happens is because of the years and because people don't show up for those meetings, their dues pay for other meals. So every time any one of you has ever showed up, I finally got told, please don't worry about it. All your board members are welcome. We always like seeing Mid-Peninsula Water District at our board meetings. So we pay for 5 memberships. We haven't had a dues request. I've asked about it. They just said they are flush. That's their response. They're flush with cash. I said, what a problem to have, Howard.
Yeah.
So everyone is welcome, all board members. That's why I send the notice to all of you, based on your scheduling.
Yeah, I mean, I've attended the last two only because I was very, very interested in the speakers, obviously, and if I have the time, I don't mind, representing the district, if the other two are not available. So
You're all welcome. Same for Kathy. If you ever get a chance and you want to come, it's such a good group of people. And both cities report. So there's a report from the city of Belmont and there's a report from the city of San Carlos. And they usually have pretty cool information that they're sharing with the group.
I do put it on my calendar every month, but people seem to ignore the fact that my calendar's blocked. And then I end up with other meetings.
I know that feeling very well.
I had to finally start blocking off lunch because
Yeah.
I was booked from 8 to 5 with the exception of 12 to 1, and someone would plop in a 12 to 1 meeting, and I'm like, where's the consideration? So,
Yeah.
Understood. But thank you for
So
asking
on
that
the,
question, Lewis.
On the HIA, I'm listed there. I haven't been going that often, knowing Kirk has been really diligent about it, but I'll be able to go more often. And maybe Kirk, if you know you're not going, if you can let me know, and I'll definitely make sure we have a board member there.
Yeah, I missed this month's, but I try to go when I can.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing I was going to add is Lewis has been doing a fantastic job with Bosca, and I'd be interested in learning more about that or attending some things. I'm assuming Lewis is our rep, which sounds great to me, but I'd love to attend things when it works out.
And their meetings are public meetings. If you guys would like, I can certainly forward you the link when I get it, if you're interested. They are virtual meetings. And that's a good point, Brian. I'll be happy to send you those links if you would like them. I see Kathy nodding her head.
Please.
And that way, if you'd like to attend, since they're virtual, you can do that.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but Lewis has his own Form 700 and his own, that was a formal appointment by this
It's a
board.
formal
I
appointment.
think it's is it a 4-year appointment that we made?
4-year term. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's more than, it's more formal than it looks like on this piece of paper, like the
Oh,
HR.
yeah. Oh, no, just it's an
Yeah.
appointment and, Form 700 and all of that stuff. Yeah.
So
yeah.
if Lewis
Same,
walks
same
out of
as
here
that.
right now, this board, I think
No.
when there's a Burlingame council member that was on the Bosco board,
Yeah, Rosalie O'Mahony.
Rosalie, when she was no longer on the Bosco board, they left her on the Bosco board until the end of her term,
Correct.
even though she was no longer a city council member, because it's a formal
Correct.
appointment.
There are a couple still on there that are former council members. So
Yeah,
what
exactly.
I
Dan Quigg is another one from Mildred.
exactly. Yeah.
Barbara Pierce is another one from Redwood City. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I do like the comment though that maybe what I add next to Lewis's name for full transparency is his appointment term end, if you'd like that, so that then everybody knows, okay, that it is a formal appointment and that his term ends whenever. I'll look that up, and Lewis, as long as you don't mind, I'll put that next to your name. Okay. It always
Tammy,
helps because we never know when he's going to have to be reappointed or when we need to reappoint it. Sorry, Kurt.
is the JPIA actually a formal appointment, or we just have?
So it
Because-
is. I do have to send a form in with your names on it because you're the voting members.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Because
So when you guys attend, yeah, when you
700
attend the meetings, you're the voting member and I'm the alternate, right? So right now it's Brian and you. If you two attend, then one of the two of you decides who's going to be the voting member. Okay, so I'll just put 2022 on these, and then I'll delete the happy hydrant, and then I'll put the term for Lewis's appointment to Bosca on here for transparency. And that's the end of the agenda packet.
Before we leave this, I just wanted to ask Kathy if there were any of these committee assignments that you would be interested in doing as a volunteer going forward, or you may just want to think about it till next year.
Yeah, I think thinking about it for right now is good. I feel like I'm still getting my feet wet and really trying to learn everything so that I can add more value. But yeah, so next year.
Okay, sounds
Yeah.
good.
Thank you, though. I appreciate it.
And just so you know, Kathy, when we have finance committee meetings, I send all the information and the link to all the board because you're all welcome to attend. There's just rules about, participation, right? You can just ask questions or observe, right? But I do let everybody know so that when there is one and you're able to attend, it's a good learning process with regard to what they might undertake. They don't make decisions, they just make suggestions, recommendations.
Tammy, did you go over Aqua with Kathy as well? Because that lists all of us, and so is the Belmont Chamber of Commerce, and I'm sure Kathy is familiar with the Belmont Chamber, but
yeah,
the
so that's
Aqua
a good
conference
point.
may be good, for her to attend maybe
She
a
actually
conference
asked,
when she can.
She actually asked about the last one to see if it fit within her schedule. And typically they're a Wednesday through a Friday. They're gonna be in person again in Sacramento in May. And then the JPIA, which is our benefit programs, our workers' comp and liability, they're the first 2 days, the Monday and Tuesday, so that they're together. And they're both gonna be in Sacramento for the May conference. Rena's gonna be volunteered to go to that one on behalf of staff. And so when I send those acknowledgments out, hey, do you want to register? We just have to get your reply back quick because it's not just registration, it's the hotels that fill up really quickly. And I just hate trying to find other spots for you to have to stay because if it's not at the conference site or nearby, it's just, sometimes it can become a safety issue. So, but yes, Kathy and I talked about that one for the last one. And to be frank, Belmont Chamber of Commerce hasn't been meeting. Not like they used to. They used to hold an annual meeting and they haven't done that. So I have been in recent contact with Mary Morrissey, and she said that, they're hoping to try to get back into it. And then, of course, now the Omicron variant is. So I don't know really if they're even meeting virtually. It didn't sound like they were. So I'll let you guys know whenever I hear anything from the Belmont Chamber of Commerce. We were actually able to get letters of support from the Belmont Chamber of Commerce, the city of Belmont, for our grant applications, along with Bosco and the SFPUC. They're very good supporters. The city wrote a really good letter as well in support of our well project and the Dickovan Tank project.
Okay, if there no other comments, I guess we can move on to the next agenda item, which is other topics for the good of the order, which I guess is open discussion or suggestions. So I'll entertain any suggestions that what we might do better or what we should be doing going forward as far as strategic planning or related topics. We have had a pretty far-ranging conversation already, but just to say we touched on it. So
I have dinner waiting for me, so.
okay,
That's his other topic.
that's right.
Me too.
For the good of the order, we have hungry board members apparently.
That's right.
We,
Okay.
we don't think straight when we're hungry.
So just gonna point out that the meeting's being recorded, folks.
Right. So in that case, I think we can adjourn the meeting.
I'm gonna go get my glass of wine. Good night,
Thank you
everybody.
guys so
Look
much
forward
for
to
a good
seeing you all in
meeting.
a couple of weeks. Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
everybody. Thank
Take
you all.
care.
Good job,
Thank
Tammy.
you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good job.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.